Good afternoon, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane Pro and Hurricane HD video blog for Wednesday, June the 5th, 2013. Let's take a look at 91L. It should be called Tropical Storm Lopsided, if it ever came to that. I'm not saying it is a tropical storm, but if it were, and it may be, Recon is supposed to fly down there and check it out, the hurricane hunters out of Keesler Air Force Base, and it might be upgraded to a tropical storm or a subtropical storm. It is lopsided. That's my point here. That's what I'm trying to get at. Everything in terms of the inclement weather is located on this half of the broad area of low pressure, with the western half of it pretty much void of any deep tropical thunderstorms, and therefore it is more of a hybrid subtropical type system. There's a tremendous amount of dry air, a very definitive line of demarcation here, separating the very dry, stable air back to the west here versus the upward motion and diffluent nature of the atmosphere this way, that's allowing for some of those thunderstorms to really pop up into the atmosphere and thus drop a lot of rainfall underneath. One of the problems that the system is undergoing still is a lot of shear. This is the University of Wisconsin Cooperative Institute for Meteorological Satellite Studies, or the CIMSS site. The center of low pressure, if you want to pinpoint it, is north of the Yucatan here and well west of Key West and the Florida Keys area, but all that inclement weather is still sitting out here to the east of it. And over the top of the entire area, very strong winds, all coming from one general direction. There is a little bit of diffluence to the atmosphere here where the upper level winds are spreading out, and that spreading out motion is enough of a lifting mechanism to allow that convection to persist like it is. But this is definitely not an ideal situation for strengthening. Therefore, it is not likely that this will be a significant wind impact event, more so as it will be a rain impact event. And we can see that and the dry air on this water vapor image. Look at this, like I told you, a very definitive line there separating the stable dry air to the west here versus the more unstable tropical air mass to the east of the center of circulation, if it's down there, pretty weak and broad as it may be. Then, in this particular image, you can also see all that copious moisture gathering over the Gulf here, especially this very warm water where the higher ocean heat content lies underneath, some stronger convection right offshore of southwest Florida, and all of this mess is going to pull off to the north and east along a stalled frontal boundary here over the next several days in a track something like this, I believe, pretty close to the coastline. This is not a hurricane with a well-developed center. It's not a true garden variety tropical storm either. It's a lopsided sort of hybrid system over the warm tropical waters. It may get a name. We'll see about that, but it's not going to matter. The main impact is going to be very, very heavy rainfall. And the Gulf water temperatures are interesting to note here. Pretty warm right here, 28 to 29 degrees Celsius, and that's where the deepest convection is noted. But right here closer to Florida, cooler ocean temperatures, Gulf temperatures, even one little speck there that's 24 degrees Celsius, so mid to upper 70s. And this is typical for that part of the Gulf. It's the way the wind flow is and the flow of the water itself. It's complicated oceanography, but not atypical to see colder water on the shelf area. Remember that right offshore of this part of the Gulf, it's fairly shallow compared to the deep areas out here in the open Gulf. We call that shelf water, and it's a little bit colder than the surrounding Gulf of Mexico. So looking at the upper level winds, I think this is an interesting analysis. This is 200 millibars in the atmosphere. Here's the east coast, southeast of the United States here. And our system is sitting about over here. And I talked about those diffluent winds aloft. If the low pressure area, and let's just say that this was a true tropical storm that had come in from the Caribbean as an easterly wave or something, and if it was sitting right in here underneath this area of high pressure, and you can see that clockwise look to the wind barbs here, this is all clockwise, that's an upper level high or an upper level anticyclone. And if this was sitting right underneath it here over the northwest Caribbean, it would probably be a very powerful hurricane by now. because this is an ideal outflow pattern to evacuate that air away from the center of circulation at the surface. And oftentimes we'll see these anticyclones following a tropical cyclone in the Atlantic, and it's when they move out from under those, or they get to the edges like we see with our system now, 91L, that you have the problems in terms of the system not being able to strengthen. So there is very strong wind in the upper levels of the atmosphere here. It's too strong to really allow development, but it's just diffluent enough. That air is spreading out enough in the upper levels to encourage rising air from below. That's the easiest way to describe it. But it is not ideal because the low pressure center is not stacked down here underneath the center of this anticyclone sitting over the Caribbean Sea. That's a good thing, but not good for the system itself. It's not going to be able to strengthen much. It's all about physics and how it all works out. In 12 hours, I think this is it. No, 24 hours out, I'm sorry. So this will be valid Thursday morning, tomorrow morning around 8 a.m. Eastern Time. The system sitting down here, going to get a little punch of energy from this upper level trough digging in, adding some baroclinic energy as it's called. The wind still pretty diffluent up here. You can see how that some of the wind barbs are going this way, some of them are going this way, and it's that evacuation or spreading out of air that will allow this to intensify a little bit. But that's more from the atmosphere adding some energy with the coupling of that diffluence than a true tropical process with a perfectly placed anticyclone above the system and all the convection being driven by latent heat in the atmosphere. So this is kind of your hybrid. You're another way to get a tropical type system. It's not the purest. That's why it's not a big deal. At least it's not going to be a big wind maker and thus a big surge threat. But the rainfall is going to be excessive. I'll touch upon that in just a moment. The 5,000 foot level in 24 hours, the 850 millibar chart, kind of an oblong, weird, amorphic shape to it. Little pieces of energy here and there with it. So not bundling the energy around a common center. I've talked about that before recently. So that tells me that it's not very well organized. Again, it's going to be lopsided in nature. And here it is, the GFS surface map, valid tomorrow morning, the low pressure way back here, with a classic lopsided comma shape to the precipitation shield. But that'll still bring a lot of rain to Florida first, and then eventually up here across the Carolinas and Georgia. And that doesn't need to be discounted, believe me. You got to take that seriously. Heavy rainfall can cause problems just, with traffic situations, low-lying areas that are typical flood event areas when you get too much rain over too short a period of time. Not a very big wind event. I don't see any of these wind barbs in here, even approaching tropical storm force with this counterclockwise flow. Probably some choppy, rough seas along the Florida west coast, as you would expect with any disturbance coming out of the Gulf, but that's about it. And 48 hours out, this will be valid on Friday morning. Pretty nasty end of the week up here in the Carolinas. This is where my office is in southeast North Carolina. Even you folks up here in southeast Virginia throughout the day Friday. Could be some severe weather with this system, so keep your NOAA weather radios handy and follow any severe weather sources on Twitter, Facebook, that type of thing. Keep your ear to the ground, so to speak, for any severe weather potential. Going to be a breezy day along the southeast coast as well on Friday with this system, but not purely tropical in nature. It still might get a name, we'll see. It's just more of a lopsided hybrid mix than anything else. But that flood threat and the heavy rain potential, something to be taken seriously as impacts from this system. All right? Well, there you go. I'm Mark Sudduth again, hurricanetrack.com, my website. Check it out sometime if you haven't already. Always it's an honor and a privilege. I appreciate being able to do this for you on Hurricane Pro and then Hurricane HD for iPad. I'll be back tomorrow with another video blog.